Is this the mighty warrior you promised me, Admiral? The alien queen's voice echoed through the colossal chamber, dripping with condescension and just a hint of amusement. Jeff McAllister stood awkwardly in the center of the Royal Hall of Trask 9, holding a broom. Not a laser broom. Not a nanosweeper. A plain, wooden-handled earth broom. Yup, said Admiral Kane, without blinking. This is the one. The Queen's 8 eyes blinked one at a time. Her guards chittered in disbelief, their segmented limbs twitching. Around them, the court of the Zarati Empire, a race of towering insectoid beings, whispered and clacked their mandibles. Some even laughed. Jeff, dressed in what appeared to be Earth janitorial garb, raised a single eyebrow. This one can barely wield a stick, the Queen sneered. This is an insult. I'm just here to sweep the floor, Jeff said mildly, glancing at the vast obsidian tiles beneath him. You've got gunk buildup near the throne. Acidic. Might corrode the support beams. Silence. Even the air seemed to freeze. Admiral Kane cleared his throat. Your Majesty, per your request, I have brought the most primal human you requested, a representative of our lowest castes, someone untrained, unmodified, unarmed. A test, as you demanded. The Queen's voice hardened. You presume too much. No, Jeff said, setting the broom bristles gently on the floor, I presume just enough. I presume this place is filthy. I presume you're testing humanity. And I presume I'm going to pass. The Queen leaned forward, her thorax flexing as she peered down at him. Then begin, floor sweeper. This is your test. Without further ceremony, Jeff got to work. The broom made soft whooshing noises as he swept, left to right, methodically. He ignored the guards. Ignored the whispers. Ignored the Queen's glare. In fact, he even started humming an Earth tune. Something 80s. Toto, maybe. That's when the Queen's third-in-command, Subgeneral Zaz, approached. 7 feet of glistening exoskeleton and buzzing wings, with claws like meat cleavers. Human, Zaz growled, you insult our court with this, peasantry. You mock our traditions. Jeff paused mid-sweep. You ever hear of soil bacteria? Zaz blinked. What? Yeah, Earth has these microbials. You don't clean floors, they multiply. Get in wounds. Real nasty. You think you have a hive collapse problem now? Wait until spores set in. The Queen's primary antenna twitched in curiosity. Zaz sputtered. That's absurd. No, Jeff replied, sweeping more aggressively, that's sanitation. Minutes passed. Then hours. Jeff, with mechanical precision and absolute calm, swept every inch of the massive floor. He even whistled as he worked, ignoring the tension in the room. Eventually, the Queen's attendants stopped laughing. Some even started watching with morbid fascination. And still, he swept. That's when the floor shifted. With a deep rumble, a previously invisible sigil near the throne lit up, its center pulsing a crimson hue. Jeff stepped back just in time as a dozen sharp pillars rose from the ground in a circle. The Queen's eyes widened. Impossible, she muttered. The defense protocol was dormant. Admiral Kane gave a faint smirk. Apparently dust has weight. Enough to trip ancient traps. Jeff adjusted his grip on the broom. You're welcome. The pillars hissed, releasing tendrils of electric current that surged through the air. The Queen's guards leapt forward, but it was Jeff who lunged toward the central node with shocking speed, jamming the wooden broom handle into the blinking core just before the energy could arc fully outward. Crack. The energy shorted. The trap sputtered. Silence fell again, thicker than before. Then, slowly, the Queen stood. Her massive frame towered over them all. She descended from her throne with surprising grace, each step shaking the floor just slightly. The guards stiffened. Admiral Kane stepped forward protectively, but Jeff raised a hand. Let her come, he said calmly. The Queen stopped a foot away from him. She studied his calm face, the way he held the burned remains of the broom handle like a staff. Not a weapon, but a tool. Yet it had saved them all. I underestimated you, she said at last. Jeff exhaled. It's a common mistake. You will dine at my table tonight, she said, voice heavy with grudging respect. But tomorrow, you will face my real test. He raised an eyebrow. What, mop duty? The court gasped. The Queen's mandibles twitched in amusement. No. War. Jeff smiled. Then I hope your battlefield is cleaner than your floor. Laughter broke out from Admiral Kane. The Queen turned back toward her throne. We shall see, human. We shall see. As Jeff leaned against the broomstick like a staff, eyes calm, watching a throne room of aliens reassess everything they thought about humanity, he knew one thing. This wasn't over. A low hum pulsed through the war tent as holographic projections shimmered in midair. Alien warlords, field commanders, and a few very confused scribes stared at the shifting map of the battlefield. Jeff sat cross-legged on the floor, sipping something disturbingly green from a ceramic mug, while the Queen's generals bickered over formations. You cannot put the Venari tanks on the western ridge. That slope will collapse under pressure. Our scans say otherwise. Besides, the humans have no grav armor. They'll be crushed. Jeff cleared his throat. You're assuming we'll take the ridge. Every alien I turned to him. The Queen's second general, an especially wide, flat-headed brute named Nrlak, snorted. You are not here to command strategy, sweeper. Right, Jeff said. Just here to save your bugs from electro-death traps, mop your floor, and quietly watch your army trip over their own antennae. Got it. A few snickers from the scribes. Nrlak flared his thorax, but the Queen, seated in a hovering platform above them, clicked once with her mandibles. Silence fell instantly. You may speak, human, she said. What flaw do you see in our plan? Jeff stood up and walked to the center of the holographic table. He waved a hand through the 3D terrain map, clearing all the alien icons with a flick of his fingers. You all focus on high ground, heavy weaponry, overwhelming numbers. Which is great, if your opponent thinks like you. But they don't. He snapped his fingers, and the map zoomed in on the enemy's deployment, a scattered arrangement of dome-like structures with erratic patrols. They're using dynamic chaos. Think less like soldiers, more like sandstorms. If you march heavy units forward, they'll collapse your flanks before your tanks even charge. You need something else. Something like what? Nrlak asked, clearly irritated. Guerrilla patterns. Small, mobile groups. Asymmetric flanking. Think cleaning staff with attitude. Someone chuckled. Jeff pulled a rag from his belt and threw it on the table. Give me 20 soldiers, a terrain scanner, and a pile of broken tech, I'll give you victory. The Queen's eyes narrowed. You would take command? I don't want command, Jeff replied. I want results. Big difference. The Queen tapped one claw against the platform's edge. After a moment's consideration, she nodded once. You will have your 20. They are expendable. Jeff smirked. That's the best kind. 2 hours later, Jeff found himself crouched inside a decaying fuel duct on the battlefield's edge, flanked by a half-dozen Zarati soldiers wearing scrap armor and confused expressions. Repeat it back, Jeff said. We sneak through the sewage channels, pop up behind their plasma rays, use the sonic mines to mimic artillery, then fall back while they scramble. And what do we not do? Engage directly. Exactly. He pointed at one with a jagged spear. You, Rix. You're the decoy. Your job's the most dangerous, but the funniest. Ready? Rix's mandibles clicked nervously. I have never acted before. Jeff grinned. Then pretend you're mopping a floor no one wants cleaned. Across the battlefield, the enemy war machines stirred. 8-legged siege crawlers rotated lazily, scanning with glowing red sensors. The alien enemy, called the KYRR, were chaos incarnate, fast and uncoordinated but deadly in their unpredictability. Jeff's group emerged like ghosts, popping out of vents, ducking into trenches, and vanishing again before scanners could lock on. Explosives rigged from salvaged power cores lit up the field in choreographed bursts, mimicking larger attacks. And just as predicted, the KYRR reacted wildly. They pulled reserves from one side to plug imaginary breaches, redirected their artillery to fire at phantoms, and exposed key command lines trying to compensate. Now, Jeff whispered into his comm Rix, "Dance." On the far side, Rix sprinted into the open, flailing wildly with his spear and shrieking an incomprehensible war cry. He kicked over a barrel, fired a slingshot full of sticky gel at a control tower, then promptly set his cloak on fire and ran in a circle. KYRR drones locked onto him instantly, and half the enemy shifted focus to what looked like a berserking lunatic with a self-immolation problem. While they watched the fireworks, Jeff's actual strike teams moved in. They slipped through blind spots, crawled under sentry fields, and placed EMP charges at critical relay hubs. When the charges went off, half the KYRR army stuttered and fell inert. The battlefield was chaos. And at the center of it all, Jeff walked calmly through smoke and sparks, chewing on a protein bar, sweeping aside the occasional shell casing with the reinforced handle of his old broom, now repurposed with a shock core and duct tape. Back in the command tent, the Queen watched it unfold in stunned silence. Her generals muttered uncertainly. Norlac stared at the live feed like he'd just seen a ghost mop the floor of history. The Queen's mandibles twitched in what might have been a smile. "He turned chaos into a mop strategy," she murmured. By the time Jeff returned to the tent, dirty, grinning, and completely unfazed, the war had turned. The KYRR lines were broken. Their command tower, a makeshift one built from stolen Zarati tech, lay smoldering in the distance. The Queen stood as he approached. "Well?" Jeff asked. "Did I pass test number 2? She stared at him, unreadable. "You used only 20. You broke an enemy battalion with scraps." "I told you," he said. "It's all in the sweep. You think the war is over?" He smiled. "No. I think the war just got interesting." "You said." The sky above Trask 9 turned crimson as twin moons eclipsed the sun, bathing the battlefield in an eerie blood hue. It was the Queen's war ritual. Every final confrontation began under this light. A signal to her enemies that mercy had expired. The KYRR, relentless and mutated by centuries of chemical warfare, had taken the bait. They regrouped in the valley just east of the Obsidian Dunes, where Jeff's misdirection had led them. What they didn't know was that the valley wasn't just a battlefield. It was a trap. And Jeff, the self-proclaimed janitor of chaos, was already inside. A sharp buzz crackled in his earpiece. "They're forming a spearhead, human. Our outpost sensors confirm 89 warm targets, 2 artillery carriers, and 1 Skywalker." Jeff muttered, "Great. I love psychic tanks." He crouched behind a pile of scorched metal, duct tape still clinging to the side of his reinforced broomhandle weapon. Around him were 19 warriors, half Zarati, half disgraced alien mercs who had chosen to follow Jeff's madness. He looked each one in the eye. Some buzzed nervously. Others checked their jury-rigged explosives, made from repurposed floor polish and depleted capacitor coils. "We're not soldiers," Jeff said. "We're the cleaners. We find the mess, we erase it, and we mop the trail so no one ever knows it was there." A Zarati soldier raised his hand. "Is this metaphor? Or strategy?" Jeff grinned. "Both." The first KYRR scream echoed across the valley, high-pitched and metallic, like sheet metal being torn by rage. Their spearheads slammed forward, a stampede of clattering limbs and jagged weaponry. Behind them, the Skywalker floated, its translucent dome glowing faintly. It was already scanning. If it caught even a whiff of mental intent, it could pre-detonate the traps they'd buried. They had seconds. Jeff raised his broom and snapped the tip. A charge discharged with a snap-crackle-pop, and every operative activated their helmets. Brainwave dampeners lit up. They were now thoughtless shadows, invisible to the Skywalkers sniffing. "Go dark. Go dirty," Jeff whispered. They moved. Beneath the valley, his team snaked through old maintenance tunnels left from a Traskian energy project long abandoned. They emerged from secret hatches hidden behind natural stone and decaying armor carcasses. In their hands were weapons built from nothing, sharpened rods, shock grenades made from pressure valves, and glue bombs that would paralyze a KYRR limb in seconds. Above ground, the main Zarati army watched from ridgelines. It was all up to the janitor squad now. Jeff waited for the exact second the Skywalker floated past his position, then he jumped. One perfect arc through the air. He landed on the top of the dome with a clang and jammed his broom weapon through a vent in its shield emitter. The shock core discharged straight into the neurocore, and the dome erupted in light. The psychic scan collapsed instantly. That was the signal. Explosions rippled through the valley, 27 exact charges, each one detonated in sequence like a song of destruction. The KYRR formation buckled. Smoke blinded their line of sight, and their comms filled with static, courtesy of Jeff's hacked dish array, wired into an old dishwasher coil they'd dropped 2 days prior. Rix appeared from the fog like a manic god, wielding a mop dipped in thermite, screaming in a pitch that shattered 3 KYRR helmets. The rest of the squad scattered in precision waves, herding the enemy into crossfire zones where old mining equipment had been converted into makeshift turrets. But even chaos has consequences. A KYRR warden, taller than the rest and plated in black resin, tore through 3 of Jeff's allies with a plasma pike and turned toward him, shrieking. Jeff ducked, rolled, and slammed the broken broom handle into the warden's side. It barely flinched. Jeff blinked. Okay. No more sweeping metaphors. The warden lunged. Jeff caught the motion too late. Pain bloomed in his ribs as he was flung across the rocks, his comm shorting. The rest of the battlefield dissolved into noise as he struggled to his knees. Then he heard it. A soft clack. Then another. Then another. The sound of mop handles tapping stone. His squad surrounded the warden. One by one, they stepped forward, chanting, not in words but in rhythm. 3 steps forward. Tap. Sweep. Slam. The warden turned to strike, but 20 broom handles fell upon him at once, electrified and sharp, driving him to the ground in a frenzy of collective vengeance. Jeff pulled himself up and limped over, then calmly planted his boot on the warden's chest. "Clean enough for you," he rasped. Above them, the Queen's command ship hovered silently. She had watched everything. The valley now belonged to the janitors. The KYRR fled in droves, routed by improvised warfare and relentless mop wielders. The battlefield smoked, scorched, and strangely, spotless. Jeff stood in the center of it all, bloodied and bruised, but very much alive. The Queen's voice rang out through the sky, amplified through her ship's PA system. "Your test is complete." Jeff looked up at the clouds. "Hope I passed with sweeping colors." And for the first time in known history, the Zarati Queen laughed. Ask ChatGPT. Jeff sat on the edge of a broken KYRR tank, legs dangling, broom resting across his lap like an old rifle. The battlefield had gone quiet, save for the occasional distant groan of cooling metal or the flapping of flags in ash-stained wind. The sun had finally returned, golden and harsh, casting long shadows across the valley. Around him, Zarati soldiers moved with quiet reverence, some tending to the wounded, others dragging damaged gear, many stopping just to glance at him. A few saluted. Some even nodded. None laughed anymore. The Queen's flagship descended like a silent leviathan, elegant and massive, setting down where the enemy command center once stood. From its belly ramp emerged a column of armored guards, pristine, polished, ceremonial. And at their center, the Queen herself, towering and resplendent in regal obsidian plating, antennae raised high. Jeff didn't stand. He kept sipping his protein shake, swirling it like wine. "You've cleaned more than just floors, human," the Queen said as she approached. He looked at her sideways. "And you finally admit it." I underestimated the chaos within your species. I thought strategy was born of hierarchy, calculation, and instinctual order. But you, she studied him. You weaponized randomness. No, Jeff said, pointing at the cleaned-out crater where the Skywalker had gone down. I cleaned randomness. Big difference. The Queen stepped closer. There is still one final offer I must present. Let me guess, knighthood? Royal mop wielder? Head of sanitation for your galactic navy? No, she said, eyes gleaming. Command of my armies. A permanent position. You will train my elite. Fight by my side. Name your planet, and I will annex it in your honor. Jeff leaned back against the tank, chewing the end of a straw. That's tempting, he said slowly, but I already have a job. She blinked. Sweeping floors? Fixing messes, he corrected. And you see, the thing about messes is, they're everywhere. Your army's not the only one that forgot how to improvise. There's a whole galaxy out there tripping over its own boots because no one taught them how to step in spilled soup without slipping. You refuse, galactic power, for soup. He shrugged. I prefer flexible hours. There was a long pause. Then the Queen laughed, not the haughty echo she used in court, but something closer to genuine. You are the most infuriating creature I've ever met. And you've met psychic tanks and sentient ferns, Jeff reminded her. A breeze kicked up, carrying the scent of burnt circuits and ozone. One of the Zarati soldiers approached, saluting with their antennae bowed. Human Jeff, the prisoners from the KYRR lines request to speak with you. Jeff raised a brow. Me? They believe you are their new warlord. Why? You threw one of their commanders off a cliff using only a broomstick and a slippery protein pouch. Jeff sighed and stood. I did warn them about hydration. He handed the remains of his mop saber to a young Zarati recruit, whose eyes widened like they'd been gifted Excalibur. Then Jeff dusted off his pants and turned toward the holding cells in the distance. I'll talk to them. Maybe teach them about organizational charts. And floor wax. The Queen followed a few paces. You'll leave tomorrow, then? Soon as I hitch a ride, Jeff replied. Plenty more floors to sweep in this galaxy. Might check out the Sarnathi cluster next. Heard their asteroid colonies have a severe fungus issue. Will I see you again? She asked, her tone surprisingly soft. You'll hear about me, Jeff said, walking away. Probably in a debriefing about how a janitor toppled a war fleet using a spatula and common sense. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. The Queen watched as Jeff disappeared into the haze, where broken machines were being repurposed into mobile kitchens and destroyed drones salvaged for spare wire. He blended in, not as a soldier, not even as a legend, but as someone who simply belonged in the middle of the mess. That night, in the royal court, tales were retold. Not of mighty warlords or elite tacticians, but of the human who arrived with a broom and left with an army of believers. A man who didn't speak of destiny or fate, but of dirt, mistakes, and doing the job no one else wanted. In her private chamber, the Queen stared at the floor, cleaner than it had ever been. And she smiled. Somewhere out there, Jeff McAllister was probably teaching a three-eyed merc how to unclog a gravity sink using a paperclip and vinegar. In the galaxy? The galaxy had never been Messier. But finally, someone was cleaning it up. Ask ChatGPT. You said. Write image prompt give me Achiho Sturi Kwine Tapk. ChatGPT said. Here's a detailed, cinematic image prompt based on your sci-fi story. The alien queen gave him a test. He swept the floor, then the battlefield, designed to match the bold, humorous, and dramatic tone of the story. Frame picture image prompt, photorealistic, 16:9. A gritty, war-torn alien battlefield under a crimson sky with two moons. In the center stands a rugged, confident human man, Jeff, slightly dirty, holding a broken broom like a sword, surrounded by towering insectoid alien warriors in scrap armor. Alien tanks and broken psychic war machines smolder in the background. The alien queen, a massive, majestic insect-like monarch with glowing eyes and shimmering armor, watches from a hovering platform in awe. Behind Jeff, alien soldiers salute him with broom-handled weapons. The environment is dusty, smoky, with flickers of blue and red energy lighting the ruins. Jeff is smiling slightly, like a janitor who just cleaned up the galaxy's mess. Style and quality. Hyperrealistic, cinematic lighting, dramatic colors, photorealistic textures, dust, armor, fire, alien skin, highly detailed background, 16:9 ratio, epic sci-fi composition. Would you like me to generate this image too?